Before we get started, I just want to explain that we'll be using an iOS device with a socket scanner that comes with a lanyard so we can hold it around our neck any given time. It's connected by Bluetooth, and how it works is when we scan, it sends the information wirelessly, obviously, to the iPad, and we can let it go at any time if we need to tap on our iPad. And from then on, this is what I will be doing in the next training video on the iOS portion. So I'm going to log in. My keyboard is controlled by my scanner. I have to double tap on the power button on the scanner to make sure I can log in. And I'm going to select the warehouse that I'm going to be scanning. And go to Inventory, Inventory Count. Get rid of my scanner on my keyboard by double tapping just to make sure that I have everything. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to confirm that I have the proper settings. So to do that, I tap on the right hand corner where it says Settings, and I make sure that my Bluetooth scanner is enabled. Audio for scan is always useful. The other ones are the default ones. The only other one that I like to check to make sure I have is in the sync menu. I want to make sure that auto sync on logged in is turned on, which it is in this case. So basically what that is it allows every time I open my iPhone to import all the items that would have been sent from the desktop. So if we do that, then we don't have to worry about it on the iOS devices. If I'm not sure, all I have to do is just tap on sync INVMAS, which I just did, and that will actually just make sure that it goes and gets the information from the cloud, brings it on the iOS device. So I'm now ready to scan. Here, just to make sure that I have the proper inventory count, if I look at the bottom right hand corner of the screen where it says number of item and last sync, I can see the number of item, and that should match with what I have on the desktop. Again, that's all irrelevant for the user as long as everything is set up. Really all the user has to do is from the main menu, I'm going to go back, tap on inventory and inventory count again. So what I did is I had just gone back to show you that. So I'm actually ready to scan. So we're going to start with a basic inventory where we're not tracking locations. We're only tracking the item and the quantity. So we have two options when we do that. One is just to scan the item. As soon as I scan the item, it brings us the part number. And now I would be physically counting the item and making sure that I enter the count. Now one thing that happens is when I scan the barcode, it'll actually display the unit of measure on the right hand corner. And the unit of measure, no sorry, on the right hand on the bottom, in this case the unit of measure is a package. One of the things that happens is if we're scanning an item that has multiple unit of measure, we can scan the barcode that's specific to the unit of measure. And what would happen in this case is the conversion factor would display the conversion factor for that unit of measure. In this case, because we're scanning packages, we don't have another unit of measure. Or actually we do. We have two units of measure here. They both happen to be different packages. But when I pick the right unit of measure, it'll actually change the conversion factor so that the quantity that I'm entering reflects the conversion factor. So for example, if I'm scanning boxes and each box has 12 eaches, if I was to scan an each and change it to the box, it would change the conversion factor to 12. Essentially, when I hit accept, it takes the quantity times the conversion factor. So it might be a little confusing, but the bottom line is if I'm scanning the proper barcode for the proper unit of measure, this happens automatically. If I'm scanning the barcode of an each, but I'm counting boxes, I have the option to change the unit of measure so that it reflects the actual unit of measure for the unit that I'm counting. So as long as we have the proper barcodes on the items, then the scanning should actually be transparent. Whatever we scan will convert to the proper unit of measure. But we do have the option to change the unit of measure if that's required. So once I have my quantity and my unit of measure, I just hit accept. And then I get a screen at the top that shows me that I've scanned this item successfully. I'm going to scan another item. And I'm going to count two of those. And now I'm going to scan the same item again and count another two. So in this case, what's happened is instead of my green success scan drop down screen, I got a yellow one, and the yellow one is just giving me a running total of what I've counted so far. So I've counted three times, and that's why I have a running total of 12. So we would go on like that and scan and count. That's the basic inventory count. The other option we have when we do a basic count is we can turn on what we call automation. And what the automation does is it automatically adds an on-hand quantity of 1. So when I have the automation, I don't need my keyboard, because now I'm going to scan an item and it just adds 1 to the count. If I scan the item again, then it'll actually just add another 1. So if I pick a new item here that I haven't scanned, first time it's green, and now it's going to tell me 2, 3, 4, 5. So it makes it very easy to scan individual items if they're barcoded. So that works pretty well. If we don't have a large quantity of items, we can just do it like that. And at any time, we can toggle the auto Bluetooth button on top to turn it off if we want to just, again, scan and count manually and accept. So this is basically what we would do if we're only counting item. That's the best way and the fastest way if we're not worried about locations or lot numbers. If the item that we're scanning is lot numbered or serialized, then what would happen is once we count, the cursor would actually show up in the serial number or the lot number box, and at that time we would have to scan or enter the lot number, and then it would go on to accept the quantity. If there is an expiry date for a lot numbered item, then we would have to tap on the expiry date box, pick the expiry date on the date selector, and accept that. So at any time as I'm accepting my information, I can always go back to scan and I can see what I've scanned. So right now it's sorted in descending order. I can change that by tapping on the actual letters that says sort by. That's what I'm going to do now. Now I can sort it in descending order. So I can select my sort. If I want to sort in descending order, I would just select descending order. I can filter. I can sort by any of the quantity of the location. I'm not going to do anything here because that's fine. If I make a mistake and I want to change it, all I have to do is swipe right to left and hit delete, and then I would scan the item again. If everything is good and I just want to send what I've scanned so far, I would just hit the send button on the top right hand corner, and that would allow me to send the information to the server, and I would tap OK, and that would get me back to my count. So my counter is reset to 1 and my scanned quantity of items is now down to 0. So now I'm going to do another thing. I'm actually going to scan an item, but at this time I'm going to keep track of locations. So what I do here is I tap on location and I scan my location, and then from then on I can scan items and add them to the count. And what it's doing now, if I check by tapping on scanning on the top right hand corner, is that I'm able to see that not only I grab my item, but I also grab my location. And the location is going to persist. The idea is that we would scan all the items that are on a shelf, so every item that I scan would be assigned to that location. Even if I go into auto mode, basically the auto mode allows me to just go through and add item directly to that location by scanning very quickly. So again, here I would scan my location, scan everything that's on it. Now when it comes to location, there are options. We have the option to have the location clear after every scan, so then we would have to scan a new location obviously every time, and we can also make it mandatory. So by doing those two settings, now when I go back to scan, the default, or the first time I enter the screen goes into the location. So what I would do is I would scan the location, I would scan the part number, and if I had a barcode for the quantity, actually I could even scan the quantity, and in this case here I've just accepted 16,000 of that item into that location. So again, if I look at what I've scanned so far, this is the bottom, this is the item at the bottom. I've scanned 16,000 in that location for that item just with 3 scans. So if our locations are barcoded and if our quantity on the boxes are barcoded, we can again make it very efficient. If we just scan the location, if we had auto accept, then it would add 1 every time based on the location and the part number. So this is how we go through the count. So there is really a lot of efficiency when we use a barcode scanner. In some cases we're not going to be able to use a barcode scanner, so what we have to do is we have to type in the part number. So that's what I'm doing here. If I type in the part number, I can hit search or I can press return, and if the auto Bluetooth is on, it'll just add it onto the count automatically. If the auto Bluetooth is not on, obviously we have to make sure that we have the right part number. If the auto Bluetooth is not on, then when I hit enter or search, it's just going to find the item, and now I have to go and count it and accept it. If I don't know the part number in whole, or if I don't know the whole part number, but I do know a part of it, or I know the description, I can type on the little button that says DESC for description, and that brings me onto a different screen. That's a search screen. On this screen I have two options. I can search by part number or code, and I can search by name. So if I knew that within my part number somewhere I have 5,000, I can just put in 5,000, and as I'm typing, it actually narrows down the list of items to only the one that fit the search criteria. So what I'm looking for right now is any item that has 5,000 in the code. I can see the third item down the list. I don't see the 5,000 in the code because I don't see the whole code. Because of the side of the screen, we're forced to concatenate a little bit. So what we do is, if you just tap on the word for a second, it'll bring up a screen that shows you exactly what the code is, a full description, and the unit of measure, so that you make sure that you pick the right item. When the item is highlighted, if you want to add it to the count, you just hit on the top left hand corner the word back, and then you hit search to validate the search, put in the quantity, and again type accept. If you don't know the part number but you know something about the description, for example, I know I'm looking for something with the word pedestal. So as soon as I start typing, again, it narrows down my search. Now I'm only down to 3 items, and it's easy to figure out which one it is that I'm counting. So I pick the pedestal, and again I go back, hit search to validate the search, put in the quantity, and hit accept. And now I was able to add items not only by scanning them, but I was also able to add items by finding them by search, or finding them by description with a portion of the part number or a portion of the item. The idea here is we're just going through and having as many scans as we can, as fast as we can. If we don't have a barcode scanner, we have the option to use the built-in camera. To do that, we click on the scan button that's beside the next counter button. So if I hit scan, it basically opens the camera, and now I have to kind of line up around the barcode. It's a little more cumbersome, a little more difficult, but it is feasible. You don't have to have the barcode scanner, although it helps. But again, you just want to always make sure you validate that you've scanned the right item. In my page, I have a lot of barcodes, so obviously it's going to pick the one that's right in the middle, and I'm going to hit accept. So that really basically focuses on most of the actual counting process. So really the process is fairly straightforward. If we're scanning location, we have the option to force location, clear it after every scan, and then the idea is we scan the item, enter the quantity, scan the item, enter the quantity as quickly as possible. If we're counting smaller volume of items, we're only scanning by turning on the auto Bluetooth. If the item doesn't have a barcode, or if the barcode is not accurate, or if the item comes up wrong, we have the option to grab it by description. And very important, if your inventory is serialized, you'll be forced to enter the serial number. As soon as you scan an item, the serial number will actually, the box to the serial number will actually be displayed, and you'll have to go in and scan the serial number, otherwise you can't accept the item. If the item is lot numbered, same thing. And if you do have an expiry date, you have to pick the expiry date from the date selector. There is an option to turn off the date selector so that you could scan the expiry date if your expiry date was printed as a barcode on your labels. And the whole idea is that you're going to go through, scan as quickly as possible, have as many people scanning as quickly as possible. Every logical part of the count, like the end of a shelf or the end of a section, you would go to scanned on the top right hand corner. You'd be able to see everything you've scanned so far. You're able to sort it, and then if everything is good, you can just hit send. There's also the option to delete it all at the bottom. That's only if you're practicing, obviously. So I'm going to go ahead and send it to the server, and again, now I start with a clean slate. One thing I did mention, but I would like to, is if you're starting inventory from scratch, as part of the setting, there is a button on the top of the setting that says Start Inventory. Basically, that just clears up the local table so that any test or any inventory that would be lingering from previous inventory would then be deleted from the scanner. It's not critical, but we have to make sure that we're starting with a clean slate when we start our inventory. So that concludes the training on the inventory part itself. I'm only going to point out something very fast, which will be thoroughly covered in another video, but if you're not sure where an item should be located when you're counting it, you have the ability to go and see information from previous information. So if I go to location and prices, I have the ability to review the location where the item would be, but that would be from previous information, because obviously what we're doing now is we're trying to reset our inventory. We're trying to scan everything and make sure that everything is counted in the proper location. So it's basically a reset point. But if we wanted to see what the system says we had prior to that, we're able to go to the location item lookup and see where we're supposed to have that inventory. So if our system says we're supposed to have 200 of something and we've only counted 100, we still have the ability to go and see where the system thinks it is. But hopefully at this point, it's only for reference, because we're going to be scanning it and resetting it to the new count. Thank you for listening.